Hello, and welcome to today's ICMI webinar. We're glad you've joined us for Unlocking Hidden Insights from Your Contact Center, How to Drive Experience, Improve Compliance, and Increase Revenue. I'm Tim McElgan. I'm the Editorial Manager and Principal Analyst at ICMI, and I'll be your host for today's session. A few housekeeping announcements before we get started. If you have any technical difficulties during the session, simply hit F5 to refresh your browser window. That'll take care of almost every problem. If you need further assistance, just click on the yellow help icon below the slides. We encourage you to ask any questions you have at any time during the discussion. Just type your questions in the Q&A window and hit submit. We may not be able to get to all of them due to time constraints, but we will get back to you with as many responses as possible. Finally, today's presentation will be available on demand shortly after the completion of the live event, and everybody here will receive an email reminding you of its availability. And finally, thank you very much to Observe AI for sponsoring today's discussion. With that, I'm honored to introduce today's presenters, Josh Street and Leanna Catino. Josh Streets is the CEO and founder of the Scoreboard Group Consulting, a company focused on partnering with HDI and ICMI to help companies find and implement the right technologies to improve the employee and customer experience. Josh is also, I'll get there, I promise. Josh is also ICMI's technology practice leader. Welcome, Josh. And Leanna Catino is the Conversational Intelligence product marketing lead for Observe AI, an intelligent workforce platform that transforms contact centers through automation. With a focus on market trends and product enablement, Leanna works with CX enterprise leaders looking to expand their AI and data management capabilities in the contact center. Before joining Observe AI, Leanna led product marketing initiatives at TrueStar, which is now Splunk Intelligence Management, SAP, Dell, and Microsoft. Thank you, Leanna, and thanks to Observe AI again for sponsoring today's webinar. And Josh will lead off our session today. Josh, it's all yours.
Thanks, Tim. So as Tim said, I've been fortunate enough to be a leader in contact centers now for going on almost 25 years. So I can't recall a time that's been more transitional, transformational, and probably a more important period for contact centers in all those years than right now. So that's why I'm excited to be here today, excited to share a little bit more. And we've got a lot to get through and cover today. So before I get right into the agenda, as always, if you've been a part of any of my sessions, and the goal over the 30 minutes is to add value, right? So we're extremely busy as contact center practitioners right now, and we'll talk a lot about that and how things are going in the State of the Union. But if you're here, if you're taking an hour away from your team, away from your contact center, away from whatever else is going on in the business, we created this to make sure that you're walking away with some really good nuggets of information that are practical, that you can use, that basically make sense and are digestible right off the bat. So a little bit more about the agenda. We'll start with the State of the Union. We'll jump into the shifting landscape and how things are changing, what companies are doing to pivot with some stories, get into some of the technology pieces and things that are happening across the board before I hand it over to Leanna for the final piece. So a lot of nuggets here today. You're going to get everything from tips for executive leaders of the contact center all the way down to frontline supervisors. There's going to be a little something for everybody involved as we move throughout. But as I said, a lot to cover. A lot to get into here, and then we'll take Q&A after Leanna's portion at the end. So really, I can't wait until I can have a presentation a day where I don't have to go through this slide right at the very front around what's happened during COVID. But the fact of the matter is, you know, the roller coaster of COVID accelerated everything in contact centers. You guys have felt that, not just contact centers, but e-commerce and beyond. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but I think it's good to put things in perspective to kind of figure out where we were and where we are today, and the permanent pivot that's happening for a lot of companies. So there are some of our clients from an ICMI or HDI consulting standpoint that are still on this roller coaster ride. I don't think anybody's quite off it yet, but just to recap, if you go all the way to the left side of the timeline in COVID-19 in February, March 2019, and just remember the chaos that was created, the scramble that came afterwards, a lot of companies moved from that into executive decision making, not just about hybrid and workplace, but all of the future over the next 3 to 5 years around what's the new normal look like. And then some have already begun to head down the path and reprioritize or leapfrog their budgets into a permanent pivot. So it's a visual recap. We all felt it. A lot of us experienced it. A lot of us were on the front lines working with our brands, with other brands, trying to figure out what does this need to look like moving forward. So I think it's always important to start there to realize how we got to where we are today, how quickly it happened, how fast it's continuing to move, and just to let everybody know, obviously you weren't the only ones and we're not out of the woods yet. But a good visual recap of everything that's happened. So with that, I would like to just go through a state of the union, whether you work in a contact center, whether you're a consumer, whether you buy things via Amazon, you're feeling this movement that I'm talking about. And a lot of it is based in the self-service and the AI shift that's happening. So if you're trying to get funding right now around some of the tools that we're going to be talking about today, hopefully some of these stats can help you. Of course, they're linked and there's references and sources, but at the end of the day, it's the self-service, it's the knowledge bases, it's the level of AI that's happening out there today. So I think we're talking about 25% in 2021 were all handled via AI, with the plans to move to 50% by 2024. So a lot of companies, up to 90% investing in AI right now. A lot of companies, including some that I've worked with, started this journey 10 years ago. But at the end of the day, it's a noisy marketplace right now, and finding partners that are able to help you kind of move through efficiency gains, effectiveness gains at the same time is where we're trying to find the right partners that have use cases, that have physical proof of some of the pilots and proof of concepts that they've been able to lead forward and drive some successful customer experience with. So no doubt about it, the game has changed and it's going to continue to change, and this shouldn't be a surprise or a shock to anyone. But you can see all of the different things that are happening and the new buzzwords that are coming up in our marketplaces today, whether you're talking about chatbots, agent assist, next best action, machine learning, self-service, text deflection, IVR automation, intelligent routing, conversational intelligence. These are the buzzwords of the 2020s, and it's not going to slow down anytime soon. When you look at that figure around the AI software industry being 26 billion and moving to 126 billion, it's about to get noisier. So we're finding ways to cut through that noise, find the right partners that are actually able to deliver, and then have co-branded, co-hosted events where we can share some stories of progress and things that are happening where success is happening. So I want to bring this up for anybody that's been in this game for a long time, and you look at the right side, it's basically saying what got us here today is not going to get us there tomorrow. So if you've been a part of contact center leadership, IT, had any hand in the contact center, you're going to see that image as a blurb of about 100 different projects that you've probably been a part of over the years. And that's not to even take into account some of the things that are happening on the left-hand side that are very prevalent right now. So as contact center leaders, I mentioned if you're here, we want to add value because you're extremely busy. In all of the consulting and training and everything that we're working on today, bottom line is volume is up, supply chains are damaged, handle time is up in certain cases because we've automated a lot of contact types to where calls are now a little more complex. We're being asked to generate more revenue. We're being asked to implement new channels that maybe we had not thought about before. We're being asked to stay on the top of all of the technology and different opportunities that are there. And not to mention, by the way, still keep in mind the soft skills that are necessary, empathy, the automation, the AI. There's just a crazy amount of things that are happening in our worlds to the point where a lot of us are in a reactive mode versus a proactive mode because of all of the different fires that we're having to put out, or all of the different planning that's going into place to get us to the new normal. So if you've been feeling that over the last couple of years, just know you're not the only one. We've been working with a lot of CIOs, COOs, CEOs, as well as directors and beyond to figure out what does that roadmap look like? What does this transition look like through all of this? And this slide is just to show you how complex things have gotten. There are ways to make it simpler, of course, but overall, this is the state of the union of where the industry as a whole is at and how we're being asked to do more than we ever have before. So what are the obstacles? We've been hearing now for several years that, probably the last 20 years that voice volume is going away, right? So we heard IVRs are going to eliminate phone calls and you'll never need to talk to a person again. And then 10 years after that, we heard web chat is going to eliminate the need to call in. And at the end of the day, our bottom line is voice calls are still happening, right? They haven't gone away. AI is that new bell and whistle that's going to create that third chapter, if you will, of us continuing to reduce voice volume for certain companies. Some have even moved to zero voice and are doing only email support or app support or online support. So you can see the shift, but it's definitely different for every single brand. But on top of all that complexity now, we're being tossed even more obstacles from a complex problem-solving standpoint as it relates to contact centers and projects that you're likely involved in, maybe even why you're here today. So some of the obstacles that we're experiencing and kind of guiding our clients through or just talking about frequently is one, systems not integrated. So those of you that had built multi-channel environments over the last several years that are trying to get to omni-channel know exactly what I'm talking about. Or if you're already in an omni-channel environment, you're trying to connect CRM, you're trying to get some of these AI things to happen, and it might be, feel a little bit like juggling in your contact center today. And that's mostly because of the pilots and the decisions are happening in silos. So we've got a lot of different people involved and a lot of hands in the cookie jar, so to speak, today around all these different things that are going on in the contact center. So what we're noticing or experiencing as we're kind of bringing marketing, IT, operations together is there's a lot of proof of concepts and pilots happening for all of these different AI opportunities, and sometimes they're happening in vacuums or silos, so to speak. So that can create issues if there's not one overarching CX strategy that's around, or you're talking to multiple vendors from a technology standpoint and don't have everyone on the same page. We're seeing a lot of that. Backing up a little bit, a lot of this has happened so quick, and we've moved into these hybrid work from home environments during the Great Resignation, or as I've heard recently termed, the Great Renegotiation, which I think is an interesting concept. But basically, we're forgetting about call center 101. The basic training, the basic empathy, the hiring, having trouble finding the right people today. But going back to the basics is something that a lot of people aren't even taking into consideration because of how busy they are working on the technology and other aspects of what's happening in their environment. Other side of that is just the rushed experience that we had as we moved through COVID. So a lot of us scrambled to build requirements around what we're going to need to move to more of an artificial intelligence, AI-centric, self-service environment. And what happened was we made some very rash decisions across the contact center. So those that didn't go through the traditional process of building out requirements across the different teams, writing very responsible RFPs, vetting and truly vetting out who was going to meet their needs, got stuck into some poor implementations. So we're seeing ourselves right now in the industry, in some cases, in what I would call a rescue or replace mode, to where we're trying to rescue some of the poor technology implementations, or in some cases where companies without our help made the very wrong decision, figuring out what they can do to replace as contracts come up and things move forward. So if you're going through that, just know you're not the only one. It was a very rushed situation. I even heard of BPO contact center teams being stood up in as little as 2 to 3 weeks overseas for those that couldn't work from home. Just a lot of chaos that we go back to, but we're beyond that now. The other thing is just the different experiences across the different channels. So as we've built these multi-channel and omni-channel environments, we've come to a point where you've got different experiences happening depending on how you built the channel, who was involved, and if they're not all tied together across the journey. We're in a situation now where somebody might be getting an SMS experience that's different than a phone call, or getting an email experience that's different than a chat experience. So there's a lot of brands, a lot of companies that are trying to figure out how do we pull that orchestration all back together to make sure that we're doing what we need to do consistently across all the channels. The other big obstacle, and nothing new, is the virtual training, the coaching, trying to teach successful leadership in an environment where you don't have everyone all in the contact center today. So a lot of folks have figured that out. There's a lot of best practices out there, a lot of different articles that you can leverage. But to say that it's not the same as it used to be for those that weren't used to hybrid or work from home environments is an understatement. So there's a lot of people still working through those obstacles. Not only that, just over budget, over timeline, maybe only forecasting certain channels. You may not have digital in your workforce management system yet. You might not be using workforce engagement the way it was intended, or maybe you haven't even purchased it yet as you're moving towards the digital channels. So this is a diatribe of all the things that are happening in the projects that I'm working in, my team is working in, and I would say we're at the crossroads of all things CX, operations, AI, and IT technology. And it's like there's been a blend of those four corners into a hybrid type of environment where you have to really know what's going on and have a plan to see your way through these things successfully. So that's the pivot that I'm speaking of. And that's a little bit what we're here to talk about today is what are companies doing today to pivot through this, or what have they already done? So first and foremost, conversational intelligence, one that we're going to highlight and continue to talk about. And you're going to continue to hear more about it as we move through the 2020s. Just the importance of automating QA and getting those things handled, saving some time for your leaders, maybe your QA team, your operational support people. A lot of people have been down this road already. Some are just trying to figure out now that the technology is improved enough how to go about it. So it's number one on our list. With the self-serve, we're seeing a lot of companies in this digital shift trying to figure out how can we put FAQs on our website? Can we redirect email tickets to those FAQs? You saw the early stats and trends that I showed you, around 67% willing to do self-service if it's available, or 90% wanting it if it's comprehensive and they can actually use it. That's only going to continue into the next generation. But starting from the foundation, knowledge management, there are a lot of folks, a lot of teams, a lot of groups that have not figured out how to implement AI yet because they have not gotten their knowledge base where it needs to be to enable some of these other tools or agents to work. So there's a lot of companies that are starting there at the foundation, at the ground level. And if they had implemented it, going back to refresh it or spinning up teams to get that in place before they start to go down some of these other efforts. Not necessary all the time. You can have those working concurrently, but just a trend that we're seeing around knowledge bases overall. Seeing a lot of companies talk about proactive service alerts and using machine learning or other tools to say, how can we notify customers of, say, a billing change or a shipping error or something happening in the supply chain before they have to call us, before they have to reach out to us? Can we look at the behaviors? Can we look at the data, which you're going to see down in the next row, to figure out exactly what's happening overall and get a hold of them before they even create a contact and cost us money to handle that issue? Not only that, the AI-based training and coaching, the AI prioritization that I mentioned, the leapfrogging, the system consolidations, in some cases the bolting on the right tools that don't require a consolidation, that make things easier for everybody, are all happening. These are all the things that everybody's talking about, the projects that you're likely involved in or if not involved in. Maybe you're here for or looking towards direction of where this is going to So the one thing I want to show you is a roadmap. So how do you even begin to assess what this next move is or what this timeline should be? My advice and the advice that we're giving to our consulting clients is let's start with the end in mind, right? So let's look at 2025, and maybe we should start talking about your brand. And maybe we should be asking questions of your leadership team. What does that human to bot augmentation need to look like for your customer base? Do you want them to never speak to a human by 2025? Are there certain transactions you're going to want them to talk to a human? What's the split? Is it 60-40, 70-30, 50-50? Have you had that deeper conversation around what is the right fit for our brand and our brand promise and what we're trying to do? Once you've got that, you can start to move toward what are the right foundational elements that we need to layer in. And this is just an example. It's going to be different for every single company, every single client, depending on what technology they've already got in place, what access strategy and what channels they're choosing to play in, and really what their goal is and where they're moving. But you can see a shift happening to where we started with the call center, it's moved to contact center, and I would argue that we're moving towards what I would call an experience center by as early as 2023. And there's going to be several phases and iterations of that to where we're linking these experiences across smart speakers to apps to bots to beyond to get customers into place where we need them to be or where they want to be and getting a similar experience across the board. And not only that, then being able to listen to those experiences, gain meaningful insight, gather the data, and basically remove the pain points and make it easy to do business with you. So that's really where we're seeing a lot of companies investing time. They're slowing down a little bit so they can move faster. The ones that are not taking the time out to build a roadmap, the ones that are just scrambling, trying to get the next bell and whistle in place in an agile environment, that's great. Starting some MVPs, that's great. But at the same time, we need to go back to a little bit of the strategy and planning methods that we've used prior to some of this design thinking to think through longer term than just the next year. So that's really what we're preaching from a leadership standpoint, how we're directing people and what's going on in the industry right now. So if you are making investments then, and you have basically decided what your roadmap is, or you're starting to move into the process of figuring out how do we pull together a cross-functional team to figure out what our future looks like, we would absolutely recommend you're getting people from the contact center, of course, the business owners. You're leveraging IT, you're leveraging marketing, and this could be a full cross-functional effort depending on your business. In some cases, we're seeing collections lead the way, and then other areas are going to jump on, like inside sales, customer service. In some cases, we've got contact centers leading this for the entire organization, which is a beautiful thing to see. Going from that cost center to a profit center, now from a profit center to more of an enabler of all things AI and customer experience. We're seeing contact centers lead that with technology partners for the entire business. But if you're looking to build that team, or if you're in the middle of building it right now, I just included this ICMI process to give you a few things that you can start to talk about. And I've written about this maybe 2-3 years ago around ideation, building the concepts, moving, and then improving. This should not be a project. This is the new normal. This is an iterative plan. You should be testing, doing, reviewing. It should be continuous improvement. It should be ongoing, and should not be thought of as a milestone of a project, so to speak. This is an entire stack or ecosystem that has to come together to create this movement that you're likely going to need in your company. And there's even more chaos that's going to be thrown your way. So there's challenges involved with this. There's timing that's involved with this. And it has to be kind of done like a symphony, so to speak. And those powerful examples that we've had and that we've seen this work for the cutting edge companies, there's always a feeling. And it's hard to explain. It's hard to define. But this ICMI method can kind of show you the way that you can move through with a formal plan to see some of these things through. So what's the message here? The message is slow down to go faster, right? Plan your work before you work your plan. I firmly believe that experience management, strategy, and technology are going to determine who wins this game. These things are no longer competitive advantages. We're seeing a majority of Fortune 500 competing on these things to the point now it's almost like the price of admission, right? So it's table stakes. You need these things to compete against other brands. You need these things to compete in the business landscape today. The ones that haven't had these things in place, we saw them falter during COVID. We've seen them try to catch up. We've seen a lot of them in trouble. So assess the landscape, make a pivot where you need to quickly to catch up, plan your work before you work your plan, get that roadmap created, figure out which partners you're going to need, figure out what your ecosystem needs to look like, whether you're going to use existing technology or procure new, get the buy-in from executive leaders, help them understand that with everything going on, all the gains that we're trying to make, all the things that we're trying to do as contact center leaders, we're going to need now tools that help us get the rest of the way. And then finally, building your future CX and EX. That's customer experience, employee experience. They go hand in hand. We're seeing folks leave the business in large numbers that don't have this stuff figured out yet, looking for companies that do have it figured out or on their way to figuring out. And that is the challenge. That's where we're going to be for the next several years. Some would argue it's going to be more than several years. But it's an exciting time to be part of it, a lot of fun problems to solve. And hopefully these slides helped you. And I am going to hand it over now to Leanna.
All right. Took me a while to find the unmute button. Thank you so much, Josh. That was such an enlightening presentation, and I'm seeing so many questions coming through from the audience about how to select the right vendor when it comes to some of these emerging technologies, and that is exactly what we want to talk to you all about today. I just want to take about 5 more minutes maybe just to define this new emerging area called Conversational Intelligence, and then we're going to get into audience questions so that we can kind of bust some myths about some of these emerging vendors and technologies and help you find the best solution for your contact center. So again, hi everybody, my name is Leanna Catino. I work for a company called Observe AI, and we are an intelligent workforce management platform, and we specialize in AI and conversation intelligence. So what does that actually mean? You all signed up for this webinar because you want to take smarter actions based off your contact center data, and that is exactly what Josh and I are here to help you do. So I just kind of want to put things in perspective. This call may be monitored. This is a phrase that we all know, and maybe we love or maybe we hate it, but what does it actually mean? The contact center holds some of the richest insights into your business, and yet it completely remains in a black box. In fact, according to most reports, we find that contact centers are only analyzing about 2% of their customer data. So that means that 98% of your customer interactions, you don't have any insight about what conversations are happening, how well agents are handling them, and whether they're achieving the intended result. So that is why conversation intelligence is such an exciting, emerging new technology, and that's what we want to talk to you about today. Next slide. Oh. So a stigma, I think that that most of the attendees here are probably fighting right now within your organization is this perception that contact centers are perceived as reactionary and perceived as a sunk cost. What we all are trying to do within our organizations is champion the type of insights and the type of ROI metrics that can convey contact centers as more innovative to drive clear business outcomes. So, I would say that maybe something that you're struggling with right now are manual workflows, burnt out agents. You're making a lot of decisions based off of hunches, and you may only be analyzing voice calls. With conversation intelligence, you can automate more workflows. You can empower agents during this time when churn and burnout are more problematic than ever. And you can become more data-driven and omni-channel in your approach to customer interactions. So what is the definition of conversation intelligence? Conversation intelligence software uses AI to automatically record, transcribe, and analyze hours of your organization's calls. This makes it easier for managers, supervisors, and QA analysts to triage and prioritize conversations that are most pressing to your organization. No more ad hoc QA process. I hear from most of our customers that, they can only QA an agent maybe twice a week or even twice a month in some scenarios. If you get 100% visibility into your customer conversations and agent interactions with AI and conversation intelligence, you can focus on your top performing agents and replicate best practices, or you can focus on your bottom performing agents to coach them and improve them. One of my favorite statistics is from McKinsey, and it says that, most agents churn within an organization within 1 year. And just think about all of the money that you are spending to recruit them and train them. Conversation intelligence helps you coach agents to improve performance and move up key ROI metrics and KPIs, which I'm going to cover in a second. So some examples of ways you can use conversation intelligence to become more proactive and strategic are you can make sure agents are staying productive and efficient while communicating with customers. You can make sure agents are actively listening and showing empathy. And you can make sure agents are applying the training from coaching programs. And finally, this is the money slide. And I encourage you guys to even take a screenshot of this. These are kind of some of the ways that we coach our customers to leverage conversation intelligence to report on ROI and KPIs. So I think if you really boil it down, the way that you can report, on what is the return of investment on your contact center, it either comes down to cost savings or revenue generation. So if you look at the bookends of this graphic here, operational efficiency and risk and compliance are two use cases that are the easiest way to show how you are saving your organization money. And some KPIs associated with operation efficiency are reduction in average handle time, hold time, dead air, agent transfers, and supervisor escalations. On the risk and compliance side, this is really relevant for any industry that is, compliance or regulation heavy. And this is the easiest to quantify for cost savings because you can look at how much your organization spent in compliance breaches or litigation costs. And if you just focus on, improving efficiency by certain percentage rates, you can quantify how much money you could potentially save on compliance breaches by helping agents, stick to script adherence or mini Miranda requirements, or, you can also use conversation AI to selectively redact proprietary customer PII even better than before. On the revenue generation side, that's where we really focus on high volume sales, use cases, and CX and retention. So I would say that revenue generation and growth is one of the most emerging, fastest emerging use cases that we're seeing in contact centers today. You not only are using your agent workforce to take in inbound calls, but you're also using agents to do outbound calls and book meetings or even upsell customers when they're taking customer success calls. So key KPIs that can connect your contact center to revenue generation are new bookings, conversion rates, and cost per acquisition. And then finally, on customer experience and retention, this is classic bread and butter contact center KPIs, but I would make a bet that each one of you on this webinar today are probably really loyal to a certain bank or airline because they have really good customer experience. And I want you all to think about, how priceless that is, that brand loyalty is, and how you can leverage your agent engagement to drive retention and customer loyalty. So key KPIs that we used here are customer retention, customer churn, and customer satisfaction. And with that, I am going to stop talking and turn it over to the audience so that we can answer some questions about how to evaluate vendors for conversation intelligence and other emerging technologies in the contact center. Thank you. Over to you, Tim. All right, we might be experiencing some technical difficulties. I can get started here. I'm just looking through some of the audience questions in the portal. How does conversation intelligence technology work with my existing contact center tech stack? We have Five9. Okay, this is a really good question. I would say that most conversation intelligence platforms are cloud first, so not on-prem, but they can work with either cloud or on-prem telephony systems, and they're kind of a data layer that sit on top of a typical CCaaS or telephony system. And another cool thing is that you can leverage your telephony metadata, like IVR, for example, to segment and analyze customer conversations. So if you have a press one option for customer success, you can anticipate that that's going to be an inbound phone conversation, and you can leverage analytics capabilities to keyword search based off of a new product or campaign that you launched. So that's kind of an example of how a conversation intelligence platform layers on top of your contact center tech stack. Josh, do you want to field another question here?
Sure. So I got one from Peggy around, is there consultation or mentoring available? Yes, obviously ICMI has a full technology practice where we help people assess exactly where to move next, how to move forward. So that's everything from building requirements and going to RFP all the way through implementation. So we've got a full team established and are working with a lot of major brands right now. That's, I would say 90% of my day, except for great moments where I get to do these, are spent on those project calls trying to figure out how to help clients move forward and what's happening in the marketplace. So there is consultation mentoring available. I would also say from a vendor perspective or software provider, the game has changed a little bit. The way that companies are approaching these conversations has changed to the point where it's not so much sell, but solution-based, right? So what are you trying to do over the next 3 to 5 years? What are the things that are core to your business? What's your brand promise? What are the different things that we can do in partnership with some of these other companies to come in and provide a holistic team approach to addressing some of these challenges? So from when I was implementing conversational intelligence, and I just looked at the respondee or attendee list 15 years ago with some people in Chicago, things have gotten a lot easier. Number one, a lot more cost effective and a lot different than they have been over the last several decades. So if you haven't been down the road yet to buy some of these things or get involved in some of these projects, it's definitely the time compared to where we were at, several years ago with how the technology was just coming to light, and the cost and the narrow playing field. It's really improved, and it's a great time to get in.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, Josh, you mentioned this earlier in your presentation. I would say for anybody who's evaluating new technology or vendors, don't be afraid to ask for a POV, and don't be afraid to really, dig a layer deeper on what implementation looks like. Vendors should be very motivated to, quickly spin up within your environment. So definitely make sure to ask about implementation times when you're evaluating vendors and push for those POVs. Josh, we can just keep on going back and forth if you want.
Let me just check. Am I back?
Okay. Yes, you are back.
Okay, that was very interesting. I was not showing as mute, but apparently On24 didn't particularly care for what I had to say. So I apologize for that, everyone. Here's another question that's come up, and Josh, I'd be interested in your view on this. Is how do you see conversation intelligence working with existing QA and coaching programs? Do you see a lot of power to that combination of technologies?
Yeah, I do, and I think Leanna covered it a little bit around it acting as a layer on top of what's already existing. Having gone through many of these implementations, transitions, you have to figure out internally, what's this mean for our QA team? What's this mean for the people that are still listening to calls? What does their role become? Is there more value add as we move into these? What kind of job descriptions are we going to need to edit or change as we move through this transition? The cost savings is exponential once you automate some of these things and get them outside of human presence and allow the humans to do a more complex pain point solving, finding the key call drivers, building the queries. You can absolutely shift resources if you need to, if that's of value. But there is an extremely powerful opportunity here to leverage these things all the way from sentiment to all of the other great stuff that conversational intelligence is doing to kind of harness some solid results for your business. So on top of, in accordance with, in addition to your current QA program, all of those things apply, as Leanna said earlier.
Great. Thank you. Leanne, somebody's asking for, a mini case study. Do you have any examples of how conversation intelligence could help us? We're a medium-sized commercial insurance company.
Yeah, let me think about that. Okay. We work with a lot of insurance companies. So, something that's really interesting about insurance is that it's an extremely compliance-heavy industry. So immediately something that comes to mind is, really optimizing how your agents are handling conversations when, PII sensitive information is being discussed on the phone call. You can leverage redaction using AI to, make sure that all of those conversations are, above board within your organization. Another thing about insurance companies is that I think they're about 50-50 when it comes to inbound versus outbound agent conversations. Oftentimes, agents are responsible for upselling or increasing the insurance offering to customers and clients. They also have to be extremely consultative. When you can definitely think about, you can measure with conversational AI how many meetings are booked, and you can also, specifically examine each one of your agents or each one of your agent teams and coach them, based off of new insurance offerings. And then you can measure the success of that coaching program to make sure that your agents are articulately talking about your new service offerings.
Got it. That's great. So Rick in the audience is made a note, really, that this seems a little more focused in his view on B2C rather than B2B. Leanna, and then Josh, could you talk about any implications or differences in a B2C versus B2B environment for this kind of technology? And let Leanna take first go.
Yeah, and Rick, feel free to share what industry you're into, and we can get more specific. But, when I think about B2B use cases, I think a lot about supply chain issues and maybe operations use cases that you may be facing across agent teams. Something that we often talk to customers about is how to be more proactive in your agent engagements. You can, leverage keyword searches and look across your agent base based off geography to see if supply chain issues are happening in certain parts of, North America. And then you can proactively give agents new scripts or coaching to address supply chain issues they may be facing in that geography. But it really does depend on use case, and I'm happy to be more specific if you're willing to share. Josh, any insight from you?
Yeah, I would say this definitely applies to business and not just consumer, and the technology as a whole supports not just customer service, but sales and even E&O, right? And having recordings and tracking and everything that you need from an errors and omissions standpoint all in one place to be able to go back if needed. But at the end of the day, running word clouds of what different competitors are being mentioned in different phone calls or different interactions, what people are talking about, looking for key pain points or key things to overcome objections if you're selling to different brokers. Or there's so much you can do with this that used to take you, months sometimes to put together a call study and to figure out what's happening, to now you can basically build queries, build the different things, run the data, get the reports that are necessary to answer some of those questions within a matter of a day or two, and then give that information to key executives or leaders that are in a decision-making standpoint to say, here's what we're hearing, here's the information that's coming from the contact center. This should inform our marketing, this should inform our sales, this should inform IT, it should inform every team of what's happening and what people are likely saying, versus waiting for a customer experience survey to come back a month later and then being behind the game, so to speak, and adapting to that feedback and that movement. So there's so many different use cases and things that can apply in insurance, with brokers, outside of brokers, but this definitely fits not just the consumer model, but the B2B model as well.
Great, thank you. Let's start with Leanna on this question, I think. How does conversation intelligence technology work within the existing contact center tech stack? And obviously, I want to be careful about not implying that we're promoting any given brand, but can you talk in general terms about how you integrate CI into your existing tech stack in the contact center?
Yeah, sure. Tim, I addressed that question, I think, when you were dealing with some technical difficulties.
I apologize. Yep, sorry about that.
No worries. I will take a moment to, when you are thinking about integrating a conversation intelligence solution, something that I forgot to mention is, speech transcription accuracy. So, something when you're evaluating vendors and you're thinking about adding this data layer, you definitely want to look at transcription accuracy. Industry average hovers around 70%. But if you work with vendors that have in-house AI and ML data scientists that are constantly calibrating and tweaking models for accuracy, you can get up to 80 or 85%. If you think about it, it's really garbage in, garbage out. If you're operating off of data that is inaccurate, you're not going to be able to make good decisions. I would definitely consider that element as you're looking to integrate conversation intelligence solutions into your tech stack.
Great. And I from an independent perspective, Josh, what are the types of advice you would share with clients as if they're looking into CI? Specifically, in terms of their integration efforts.
Yeah, integration, have the right team available and on board and ready to go. This is an effort where the vendor is going to do most of the heavy lifting and professional services, but having the right team established internally to help guide this and get it set up correctly is a key success element that we've seen in a lot of our implementations and projects. So just sometimes with, we're busy being busy. And I always say activity-based activities, not value-based activities. A value-based activity that if you can hand off some work is to get project leadership engaged in this type of event, get frontline leadership engaged, make sure there's a strong change management plan as far as the rollout, and make sure you're accurately thinking through what to do when you get into production and how things are going to operate. And it doesn't have to be a Band-Aid rip. It can be a phased approach. Just pause for a bit and think through it and make sure you've got the right people and the right teams there to support the effort to ensure it goes as smooth as possible, just like any other technology project.
Sure. That's, yeah. Leanna, what kind of customization is required on this stuff? Obviously, every business is different. Every customer base is different. There's a lot of different moving parts, but I'm just curious, how much do these solutions need to be customized to a given client, and how much effort does that require? Because obviously, we've got practitioners in the room. They know these special initiatives come down the pike. It's good. The time has to be found amidst all the other work that you're doing constantly. So, what does that process look like as you're starting to move CI into your contact center?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say that the customization comes down to being really clear with your vendor and also your leadership team about what use cases you're trying to tackle and how you're going to measure success, and be really clear about what you're going to tackle. You can't do everything at once. You've got to start small and build. What is the most pressing issue that you are trying to affect change in with better analytics on today, and how are you going to measure that? And also, I would say, create the most successful, conversation intelligence initiatives that I see is when there's like cross-departmental partnerships. A contact center leader is partnering with marketing, or partnering with product, or partnering with operations to, optimize a certain metric, whether that is campaign tracking, supply chain shortage tracking, or operational efficiency metrics. So getting, multiple champions within your organization to see the value of this initiative is only going to make you more successful.
Great. And Josh, from your perspective as a consultant going in and working perhaps not directly with CI at this point, although certainly in the future, what are the kind of best practices that you see out there?
Plan your work before you work your plan. I mean, as Leanna said, you've got to have the use cases, you've got to have the success measures, you've got to have the right team and ability to move in phases and realize that this doesn't happen overnight and there are obstacles. But at the end of the day, if you've got a good idea of where you're looking to go and what you're looking to gain from this, which you likely probably have to have before you can even get the investment and spend considered for this. I'm not saying it's above and beyond, but saying you have to be very purposeful in your efforts here. And if you are, you're going to see that return on investment faster than you would if you just move in and try to stand up a new technology. So I think it goes into everything that she said and educated us on. I see the same exact kind of path forward.
Gotcha. Okay, great. We're getting close to the end of the hour here, so I wanted to give both of you an opportunity to sort of wrap us up with any high-level, top-level thoughts. We'll go with Josh first, and then we'll let Leanna close out. So, Josh, anything that we didn't touch on that you think is really important for this audience to hear and to think about?
Just a very quick high-level recap. It's moving quick. If you're behind, there's some catching up to do. This is the new normal. Get a strategy in place, get a roadmap, choose the vendors that offer the efficiency and effectiveness, like Observe.ai, and basically move forward with the right team in place to do what you need to do to get the results that you're looking for. And that's kind of the holistic version of my presentation. And thanks,
Gotcha.
Tim, and thanks, Leah.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Josh. That's great insight, and I certainly encourage everyone to check out all the various places that Josh shares his insight across ICMI and HDI. Leanna, we're going to let you wrap up. Thank you, first of all, to you and to Observe AI for sponsoring today's session. I found it incredibly interesting and useful, and I hope everybody else in the audience did as well. So we're going to let you kind of take us out with some last thoughts.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim, and thanks, Josh. Everybody, thanks for sticking with us on this presentation today. I just want to say that if you're here, it means that you really care about the performance of your contact center. And the good news is that with the power of AI and conversation intelligence, you have the ability to get 100% insight on your customer conversations, which is going to make you a more proactive and data-driven contact center operator, and you will be perceived as more strategic. So I am here to chat if you guys want to learn more. And thank you all for your time and attention today. This was really fun.
Great. Thank you, Leanna. And that is about all the time we have today. So thank you to everyone in the audience for joining us. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Leanna, for participating and providing some fascinating insight. And thank you again to Observe AI for sponsoring today's session. As a reminder to the audience, everyone will receive a follow-up email that will include a link to view a recording of today's session. If you found this useful, please share that link with your colleagues. And once you leave the event, a short survey will pop up in your browser window, and we'd appreciate it very much if you take the time to share your feedback on the webinar. It helps us tailor our programs to your interests and information needs. So thanks, everyone, and have a great day.